When I finally hung up my footy boots, having no footy to worry about meant I could pursue other interests, one of those being architecture. Now, I've been involved in a number of residential projects and smaller commercial builds, so I've come across a number of architects in my time. And let me tell you, from my experience, the very best architects are passionate, they're articulate, they're visionary, and perhaps most importantly, not short of an opinion or two. In this series, Designing Dreams, I meet some of New Zealand's very best architects and visit their favourite Kiwi homes. Big, small, old, new, all sorts of amazing houses all over the country. Along the way, we'll talk about the big housing issues, like affordability and sustainability, and what the future of the New Zealand house just might be. Plus, I'm always on the lookout for ideas and inspiration for my own projects. So I get the feeling we're going to learn plenty, we'll enjoy ourselves, and we'll get the inside word on what it takes to design dreams.
We didn't really have an overall design to begin with. We just started building. A couple of rooms on the ground floor first, a couple more on the second floor, then the third floor attic. We were halfway through the fourth floor lookout when a town planner turned up. He said our construction had exceeded the allowable height limit. This was my first encounter with council bureaucracy. Not my last, though.
This episode is about Mr. Roger Walker, ONZM, man about town and living legend. Roger made his name in the 1970s and 80s in Wellington with a series of radical, iconic buildings that railed against the prevailing uniformity of the time.
I suppose the reputation I got in the early 70s when I first kicked this off was that I was deliberately driven to do houses that stood out. And amongst the grey and beigeness, there was this little, we used to call them joy bombs in the suburbs. Yeah, I don't make huge amounts of money, but I get a lot of smiles and grins.
Roger's 79 years young, still working, still with a maverick spirit and zest for life, still loving Wellington, which, as they say, you can't beat on a good day. And indeed, it's a picture postcard day for Roger to show me the first of his 3 favourite New Zealand houses. Roger, very nice to meet you, Matthew.
You too, Matthew.
Holy moly, look at this.
I know.
It's incredible.
I know. It's iconic, this house. People have described it as a sculpture, and I think that's correct.
Wow,
Yeah.
look at that
Yeah.
thing. Look at these stairs on the roof. Like I have
It's called
never...
the Oh My God house.
It is the Oh My God. It's the Oh My God view. Look at that. This is the work of Sir Ian Athfield, Ath to his many mates. He started building here in the early 1960s, and well, he just kept going.
It started off as a single house.
Yes.
And then it's just grown organically. It's a whole community now.
All these places around it and behind me are all part of it, are they?
They're all part of his, yeah.
It goes all the way down here.
Meanders down the hill in different directions. Yeah.
So this is part of it as well. Wait, this is like, it's a village.
Well, they kept buying adjoining sites. He had this romantic idea of surprises, you know, and he certainly achieved it.
Roger and Ath were nicknamed the terrible twins of Wellington architecture at the time and were responsible for some of the capital's most notable buildings.
I actually met him on a construction site of one of my houses. There were these 2 shadowy figures on the roof of this house, and one of them stepped forward and said, "I'm Ian Athfield. This person with me is my client, and I'm just showing him that there's another lunatic architect in Wellington, so that he feels more comfortable working with me." Yeah.
He's as mad as he was.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
right.
brilliant. This was Ath's family home, an experiment in communal living and the office for his fast-growing architectural practice. But nothing grew quite like the house itself, sprawling down the hillside, a revelation to some, an unholy blight on the landscape to others.
I think if you build something different in an existing neighbourhood or established neighbourhood, you invite reactions, and that reaction can vary from a mild criticism to praise to violent aggression. You know, we've even had someone fire at the tower and we've got a couple of bullet holes through it.
But not even gunfire could stop Ian Athfield ever expanding the boundaries of his kingdom. assembling a complex of multiple buildings joined by a series of stairs and walkways. Talk about nooks and crannies. This place has got more nooks and crannies than I've ever come across in my life.
So special, isn't it?
Roger, this place just keeps on surprising. Like, I thought the pool was just going to be a little square pool, but look at that. Like, it's just genius, just amazing.
I think you have to be disappointed if you weren't surprised.
Wow, it really is quite incredible, eh?
And the spaces between the buildings are just as important as the buildings themselves. Everything's kind of interlocking.
There's sort of heaps of little areas. You can come and sit here. You can just get away from that, you know, like this is a nice little sunbathing area. This would be me.
Funny enough, he established a reputation as a very responsible architect.
Right.
Rather than a nutcase.
Yeah.
Eccentric.
Yeah.
And so he started to do bigger work before he died, and then his son's taken over.
Sir Ian Athfield's son, Zach, now runs the architectural practice with more than 30 staff occupying a variety of different spaces around the complex. That's interesting. See the glass bit here?
Yes.
That's different to anything else that's here, eh?
Obviously, Zach's got his father's DNA.
Oh, okay. That's Zach's edition.
Yeah. He thought, well, my father was all solid plaster. I'll go all glass.
Very good.
To be different.
Oh, but it looks cool, eh? And
It all fits.
It doesn't look out of place.
No.
Not that anything would look out of place with this place. Today, the Athfield House can still be described as unorthodox, but that difference is now acclaimed, even revered. More than 50 years after building began, the house won a New Zealand Institute of Architects Enduring Architecture Award. The judges said, this is the building that, above all others, defines an exuberant era in Wellington architecture. It's not till you get down here that you realise the immense scale of the place.
Huge.
He must have needed scores of builders to help him build this, surely.
Well, he mainly built it himself. He loved using his hands. He employed builders or bricklayers from time to time to do certain sections, but he was always here himself on the tools.
Yeah.
And he sort of drove the whole thing.
Yeah.
And he knew how to lay concrete blocks and knew how to plaster.
So he got in there and rolled his sleeves
And part of
up.
the strategy is it looks handmade. And because he had a sort of guru status in the architectural community, young architects used to say, well, we'd like to help. Because the house wasn't just his house, it was a statement of an alternative way of living. He was very intelligent in terms of rules and regulations. I think one of the reasons he bought all the adjoining houses was that he could give himself consent. If you're too high here or too close to this boundary,
you have to get
the neighbours can give you utter crap. You know? So he could sign everything off.
Genius. The Athfield estate is now officially protected. Heritage New Zealand has given it an Historic Place Category 1 listing. However, Ath went further and had his house formally classified post-modern organic so it could continue to grow.
See, this is the original house. This is the genesis of the whole thing.
Wow!
Yeah.
Look at that though, like how low you are here and then that feeling of like it's going up.
Frank Lloyd Wright used to do this. He had this idea of when you came into a house, you felt slightly compressed.
Yes.
And that enabled you sort of to burst into the house.
Yeah, it's just knockout, isn't it? No, it's certainly
the element
different.
of surprise.
Certainly different, and then you've got... So
yes, yeah.
First and foremost, you've got to judge a place on how it feels, and everything feels warm, it feels cosy, you know, it's very organic, right? So it's left very raw, so it's not everybody's cup of tea. But for me, it's a pretty special home. This is amazing. I would happily live in a house like this because it's just so quirky. This house is a rabbit warren of living spaces and hiding places. What is that? Like,
well, I think
what is that?
I actually painted the inside of that like 60 years ago.
Yeah, you did a pretty average job.
I did a pretty crap job, yeah, it's falling down.
Everywhere you look, you can see pretty much every room.
Well, I'd say it's three-dimensional Lego. Like
that's it. That's a good way of putting it.
Interlocking, you know, interlocking spaces. And each space is appropriate to its purpose. So he was a very creative thinker.
This is obviously a home that means a lot to you. Why is it one of your favourites?
Well, because it was so different. You know, it's the joy and surprise thing. My favourite architecture involves joy and surprise. I mean, nothing is worse than something that's totally predictable and boring. And so this house, it's just so much fun, and it works so brilliantly, and it's worked for 60 years without having to be changed and modified. I'm still in awe of him, even though he's passed on. People still compare me and him, but I think we were different.
Yeah.
But we did enjoy upsetting people, you know.
Roger Walker, along with his contemporary Ian Athfield, became well known in the 70s and 80s with some fairly out there designs. Roger trained to be an architect at Auckland University, but couldn't find a job in the city after he graduated. So he moved to the capital, where he was taken on by the future Mayor of Wellington, Sir Michael Fowler.
And he just chucked me in at the deep end. He said, we've got all this stuff, and we haven't really got any good designers at the moment, so you can design the Wellington Club, which was a multi-million-dollar building, and that's the first thing I did.
From there, Roger was given the task of designing what was originally called the Linkspan building on Wellington's waterfront.
Well, I'm very proud of this thing because it's a little bit of joy in a rather dour environment. It was originally a customs area. Architecturally, it had these projecting windows to make it look as though that was its function. It was keeping an eye out, you know. I'm watching you. So it was a big brother building in that sense, although it's a very little brother. Well, I think Wellington has got a lot of variety. It's quite a dynamic city in terms of the visual variety and the different activities that are going on here. The element of surprise and delight is very prevalent in Wellington compared with other cities. I really couldn't imagine myself living anywhere else in New Zealand because I like the urban quality of it. You know, I suppose I had a really overreaction to being brought up in suburbia. I like the juxtaposition in Wellington of all sorts of activities. I believe that the city is a library of buildings, and I don't like this attitude that comes from some urban designers that say things have to blend with one another. It's really the architect's job to sort of keep moving things on.
Although I've only just met Roger, well, we get on like a house on fire. And while that may not be the best analogy to use for an architect, I'm super amped to go and check out a couple of homes that Roger's chosen as his favourites. But first up, let's go and have a look at Roger's very own designs. And as you'd expect with this guy, well, they're both very, very different. Although he's so closely linked with Wellington, in fact, one of Roger's very first commissions was in Auckland.
Ooh. Look at this. My lovely sister and brother-in-law had bought this amazing piece of land, and they thought it was really challenging, but they wanted something different, and they sure got something different. The genesis of the house was that it had to be respectful of its site. The idea was to disturb as few trees as possible. I think we only had to take 2 out. And so the house sort of wraps around the trees and basically follows the trees up towards the sky. We like the idea of these 2 very strong little towers. So they're blockwork and expressed as a solid element. And then the other timber bits kind of just sprout out of these white forms.
Roger's sister Sandra and husband Ray lived with their family in the house for 45 years before selling it recently to their neighbour, Roger Walker enthusiast Phyllis.
He saw the space and worked with it and did something in tune with the environment. And I think that's just the wonderful part. And the house itself is just full of surprises. There's something magical about it.
Well, this is obviously the living space, so it's the most generous. I put a lot of roof glazing in just to sort of bring the outdoors in. So there's a visual connection between the timber of the house and the growing timber outside. The glazing is not subject to a lot of heat gain because the trees themselves provide shading. So we could have a lot more glass because of the nature of the site. The house has been added onto. This line here was the original line of the house, and this whole section with the doors and the windows here was moved.
Over the years, Roger's been called back a few times to design extensions.
The house grew along with the family. So this was the family room where the teenagers hung out. We knew from the beginning that the house was going to grow, and the shape of the house means that it can have lean-tos off the high bit. It's very important, I think, for a house to be able to adapt to the people in the house who are growing up in the house.
To limit the impact on the site, and the trees, of course, the house has a relatively small footprint, and the top 2 floors are bedrooms.
The idea of these 2 little rooms was to create a feeling of intimacy, but within solid walls. So the height, this is sort of door height here, And from that height, you can spring 60-degree pyramid forms. So it gives the house these two distinct little castle shapes. We're at the peak of the house now. It ends up in a final celebration of pointing towards the trees. So climbing all this way up the house to the 3rd floor, it needed to be something special. It's very important in your one and only life to actually enjoy and be able to appreciate the spaces that you're in. I mean, the spaces have certain qualities. They can be depressing, they can be uplifting. You can't live in a horrible, boring box and then say you've got a great life. And I think we need to break out of the box.
Right from the start of his career, Roger made a name for himself with house designs that stood out in relation to the norms of the time, or the norms of now for that matter.
This woman rang up and she said, I hear that you design nice houses. She came in and she looked at pictures on the wall with a sort of slightly quizzical expression, and then she said, Mr. Walker, do you design anything normal?
So, is Roger Walker capable of designing normal? The answer is yes, maybe. On a dramatic clifftop site in Scarborough in Christchurch is the Finnis House.
They sent photographs of the site, but when I came down, it was just gobsmackingly beautiful. You know, it was so dramatic. And the clients, they were very open to suggestions. So this was an opportunity to be creative.
And though it would be hard not to be inspired looking out at this view, this was a very steep, unforgiving site, perhaps one best suited then to a Wellington architect.
I think Wellington's a good proving ground for working with difficult sites. And nowadays, sites are getting more and more difficult because the easy ones have been built on. I walked down the ridge in order to look at the context in this very, very high cliff. And I remember these seabirds wheeling about, you know, and diving into the water. And I thought, well, because the roofs were long and slender, if we twist the roofs, they'll be reminiscent of birds' wings. What was coming into my tiny head was an abstracted seabird sitting at the top of this cliff. The site did generate the result to a very large degree.
Council regulations restricted the height of a house on this site to 7 metres, so the only way to get 3 levels was to dig into the side of the hill.
That actually saved the house, because it wasn't here very long before the 2011 earthquake sort of took down a lot of stuff. I actually rang the clients after the earthquake had happened. I expected to hear googling noises on their phone, meaning they were at the bottom of the cliff in the water, but they were still here. If it had been a pole platform house, it probably would have shaken itself off its footings and gone over the cliff.
The wing-like roof is not the only oddly shaped part of this house.
It sort of made sense to have one side of the house parallel to the driveway and the other side parallel to the top of the cliff edge, and that created a kind of wedge-shaped plan. Architecturally, there's far too many rectangles and not enough triangles, and so this is an opportunity to sort of triangulate the plan. The windows are rectangular because sliding triangles is not very easy. Well, I like the entrance area. That's probably my favourite, but the whole front of the house kind of blocks the view. And then when you come in the door, it's bang in your face. And I like that sudden surprise.
Surprise is an understatement. This is a genuine, wow, oh my goodness moment. And what is no surprise is his clients, the original owners, are still living here.
The way that it's designed looks like you're right on the edge of the cliff. I've had some people that have actually not really wanted to come in the front door. It can be, a bit off-putting because you literally look like it's right on the cliff.
The house is very exposed to the elements, but it can withstand what nature throws at it.
If there's either a northerly or a southerly that's beating at the house, it feels like you're at sea because you can hear the waves, and sometimes the whole house will just give a bit of a shake. It's quite an adventure. I don't feel at threat from those elements like that, no. And all the windows have got special marine grade, the council, rightly insisted, so they can withstand it. And I have seen them give a little bit of a bend some days, but they withstand all of that's been thrown at them so far.
It's certainly an amazing property on a spectacular site. But without turrets, towers or portholes, does it look like a Roger Walker house?
I think the fact that the roofs are sloping and that there is fragmentation and things are not parallel and things are coming at each other at different angles might cause someone to say that I had something to do with it. I'm not saying it's been a radical new direction, but I like to think I'm evolving in my advancing years, because you can easily become frozen in your own reputation. And so it is a challenge to move beyond that.
The Finnis House at Scarborough is dramatic architecture on a dramatic site, but clearly it's a high-end build with a price tag to match. Next though, Roger's taking me to Whanganui, to the second of his favourite New Zealand homes, one that shows just what can be done on a tight budget. If you've been following the New Zealand real estate market, you'll know provincial cities like Whanganui have become very hot property indeed. In 2010 though, a steep section here was snapped up for just $18,000, and the house that was then built came in on a budget of $165,000. How on earth did they do that? This is the second of Roger Walker's 3 favourite New Zealand homes. Oh, I'll tell you what, Roger, you get fit walking up here every day, wouldn't you?
Now, Matthew, this is the Dogbox.
Wow, look at that.
Isn't it amazing?
This is lovely, actually, isn't it? I'm liking this, Roger, but looking back at this, from an architectural perspective, what's important about this property?
Well, there was 3 young architects who decided to build something. They wanted a house. They had virtually no money.
Yeah.
They built it themselves, and they all work together, and they still speak to each other. So that's an achievement in itself.
3 new graduates from Victoria University's Architecture School were keen to not only put what they'd learned into practice, but to pick up on some practical building skills along the way. On this hillside section in Whanganui, along with various friends and family, they spent the next year of their lives building their own house. They named it the Dogbox, because they knew that's exactly where each of them would end up at some stage of the build.
There's a lot of very direct and honest use of materials, I think.
Oh, but it really cool. But it looks artistic.
It is, well,
Hey.
well, it's architecture.
Yeah, well, it is. It is. I didn't expect anything like this from being down on the road. It's like being in the treetops.
It is.
It's a house in the treetops. The Dogbox went on to surprise everyone by being a finalist in the 2013 Home of the Year Awards, up against projects much bigger and much more expensive.
So what do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what, it blows me away. The shoestring budget that these 3 young architects built this place on, it's incredible. And it looks Mac Daddy. I really like the exposed concrete.
What I really like is the contrast between this really solid wall here, with
Yes.
no windows at all,
Yeah.
and just a few metres away is glass,
Yeah.
which leads outside. So the whole house feels much bigger than it really is.
Doesn't feel like this place is a cheap house. It feels like it's,
It's quality, yeah.
It's modernist, it's all open plan, indoor, outdoor,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's well
Yes,
thought
yeah.
out.
This end is the kitchen.
Yeah.
It's the flow between indoors and outdoors, I think, is the great strength of this house. I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall when the 3 of them were having conversations about what to do next.
Well, considering none of them are builders, they're all 3 were architects,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
They literally did everything, right? They poured the concrete.
Yeah.
Everything you see here,
Yeah.
they did. Which
So
is
instead of holding pen and ink, they held a hammer, basically.
good on them.
I mean, the fact that everything's so robust. Been here for 10 years, but it looks as though it was finished yesterday. Yeah.
And I like this little beast here. This is quite ingenious, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's a little movable cooktop. So if you want to do a chicken yakitori or one of those Japanese things where you flick it around and you want to impress your mates, you just wheel it down there, hey? Don't know, like, how good is that?
Yeah.
And what amazes me even more is they had no experience in building, and they just rolled their sleeves up and ripped in. And this is what they created. It's quite incredible.
So when you get building inspectors on a job, Matthew, you ask to have a look at their hands, and you can tell whether they've ever held a hammer or not.
Yeah.
A lot of them haven't.
So, like, hands like that, hands like that. Well, let's have a look at your hands. Well, yours are pretty smooth, mate. How
Oh,
you, like,
no, well, I got a skill saw cut
you've
there.
been, like,
When I was
throwing
building a house,
stones and glass
I zapped
houses.
a bloody blunt skill saw through my thumb. That was
Come on, then. Let's go upstairs.
I love these big sliding doors. Like, they're so generous.
Generous.
Yeah.
Just like you, young man. Just like you. Generous of
Oh, no.
spirit. The bedrooms are all upstairs, but unusually, the internal stairs first take you back outside. Isn't that a beautiful view through there? Like you feel you're up in the clouds now, don't you?
Yeah, but it's so generous, the outside spaces are
Yeah.
There's nothing mean about, narrow corridors. It's fantastic.
Yeah. You know what I really like about this place is the cantilevered balconies.
Yes, you feel as though you're actually outside the house, completely outside
Yeah,
the
and
house.
actually in the treetops.
Yeah, no, I just love the way they've sort of embraced the landscape. So you're not just looking at the view, you feel as though you're actually
Part of it.
Part of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. This is important, Matthew. See these blue trusses here? They bought 4 of them off Trade Me. Yeah, they've kind of designed the house around the trusses.
Yeah.
So, I mean, talk about innovative and ingenious.
What I'm really interested in is down here because I love an outdoor bath, and this is an outdoor bath. You can
For
be
a
sitting here with your
romantic bath.
wife or your partner
Yeah,
or your
well, you can-
boyfriend. And one thing I have noticed, I've got a funny
right.
feeling that this thing here will move, right? So
Yes,
as it
brilliant.
does,
Yeah, so it serves 2 purposes. It actually shades the bedrooms.
shades the bedrooms,
And opens
but
this up.
opens it up so you can be having a bath in nature.
Yes, exactly. So you feel as though you're actually bathing in the trees.
You are.
Yeah.
I'd say let's have a bath, but that'd be a bit odd, mate, so we won't. Nowadays, the Dogbox is home to one of the 3 original architect builders, Ben Mitchell Agnon and his young family. The other 2 live in Wellington, and they all credit the Dogbox build with giving them a much closer appreciation of the relationship between architects and builders. For you, what is it that makes this place so special?
What makes this place so special is it can demonstrate what clever design can achieve on a very limited budget. It's comparable with a multi-million-dollar house. So my point is that affordability is a lot to do with how you think and how you imagine things and how things could be. And good on them. They should be very proud. And it's so clever and so imaginative. This house just reminds us of what can be achieved with a bit of smart thinking.
Yeah. And it's been a real privilege.
I'm glad you liked it.
Loved it.
Thank you.
Architect Roger Walker has been designing unique, playful and beautiful buildings for the last 50 years. These days, though, Roger's focus is on trying to make sure that the skills of an architect are accessible to anyone.
People love the idea of building something individual for themselves, but only a small percentage of houses that are started every year are designed by architects.
This led Roger to start thinking about modular housing and, more importantly, how to create an efficient, affordable house design with some architectural flair. Together with architect Richard Humphreys, he came up with the concept of the Cube House and built a show home in Littleton.
The thing about the Cube House is you get the maximum amount of space for the minimum of building materials. Given that materials are very expensive in this country, we have to be careful with the way they're used. We believe these houses are around about $2,500 plus GST per square metre on a flat site.
Every cube house that's built is based on the same standard spans and dimensions, but it can still cater for Kiwis' love of individuality.
The cubic format gives you significant advantages in terms of flexibility. The ground floor can be living and go directly outside, or a sloping site like this one is. You put the living upstairs and then go outside via decks and have the bedrooms downstairs.
The cube house is based on the shape of, well, a cube, but the format's much more flexible than that. By combining cube shapes in different configurations, the houses range in size from a 1-beddy, single level, all the way up to a 5-bedroom, 2-storey home. And there are plenty of other angles and unique design features, including this butterfly roof.
The shape's quite bold. And if I've got any sort of reputation at all, it's for making a statement which I like to think is quite strong, a statement about a design you genuinely believe is a solution to the terrible tedium that we live in.
There's nothing tedious about this bright, cheerful home. It feels really comfortable, light and spacious.
So we positioned the stairway near the front doors and deliberately used a different material here, this lovely ply, to link the top and bottom floors. Now over the stairs are these 2 skylights which form obviously the function of ventilating and allowing light in, but also they show the time of day, so it's like a sundial. It's quite joyful to be able to go up and down this stair and see these different patterns and how they change.
Coming up from the stairs, and you're hit by a feeling of space as you look up to that butterfly ceiling.
It's not what you're expecting, the sense of space. All these glimpses of views, and also that V shape, I think, sort of expresses the world outside You know, it sort of takes your eye up here and up here, whereas a roof going the other way kind of comes down on your head like a big hat, you know. I think a building has to be warm and dry is the fundamental, but after that, you have to be pleased with your house. So you have to enjoy waking up in the morning and looking around and saying, my word, this is nicely proportioned and nicely coloured, and the sun's streaming in. You know, we're creating architectural spaces which elevate people and which uplift them, and that's the trick.
This is the first of the cube houses, but Roger has ambitions to see a lot more.
I'd like to see a few hundred scattered around the place. There could be different characters in different areas. So a cube in Northland might be different to a cube in Invercargill. It's very exciting, you know, there's a whole range of different possibilities for the cube houses. Architects should be at the forefront of affordable housing. We should be able to come up with modular systems where you can assemble components of a house in different ways, because I think fundamentally Kiwis like to have an individual house.
But the cube house wasn't Roger's first foray into modular house design. In the 1970s, he formed Vintage Homes with the same goal of creating affordable, architecturally designed houses.
It suddenly came to me that if we had a standardised house design that has a level of flexibility in it, that we could confront these awful people that were building Tudor-style houses and American Gothic-style houses. This is in New Zealand.
Through the next 2 decades, the company produced 85 vintage houses around the country, and even one on the other side of the world. In 1981, the English new town of Milton Keynes held an international exhibition of modern house designs.
And they actually wanted to showcase Milton Keynes. Let's get new houses, new materials, new ideas.
Roger was invited, along with 34 other designers from around the world, to come up with a house for the project. He set about creating another of his unique designs.
And the show had 150,000 visitors over 3 months. There were 2 houses that had the majority of the visitors. Ours was one. We had so many visitors through the house that we had to replace the carpet. It's the fascination of the mass market that drives me, you know. I mean, I know you can get satisfaction as an architect by winning awards with some innovative, spectacular house, but it's marginalising the skills of an architect.
But winning awards is exactly what he did in one of his other projects. Roger's long-held interest in well-designed, affordable housing, not just art for art's sake, led him to think about how to incorporate individuality and architectural flair into the area of social housing. This is Whātaitai, a Māori social housing project designed for Te Aropa Trust. The original Te Aropa was located in central city Wellington, but in the 1870s, Ngāti Ruanui and Taranaki iwi were moved off this valuable land to make way for the growing colonial settlements. It took more than 100 years for the iwi to secure this piece of land and make plans for a multi-unit urban papakainga.
The association that I had with this complex was it was a modern-day marae, where people living close together, but they had privacy and they had community and they had the opportunity to go between those 2 realms. I think it's beholden on all of us to live closer together, to use less land, and of course the reaction to that is, oh, but what about our privacy and what about the noise of the people next door? So by using precast concrete, if you're careful about the way the windows look out, then there's no reason whatsoever that we can't live closer together.
To emphasise the individuality of the units, the exterior concrete walls were treated with a variety of finishes, as well as having the addition of timber pergolas to help differentiate the dwellings.
So here we are inside a typical 3-bedroom unit. There's 10 of these in the development. The basic process with the design of this whole complex was to make the units as cost-effective as possible. To do that, we decided that living on the ground floor with an open plan format, linking to the outside world, was the way to go. But as you can hear, it's a very busy road, and one of the things we had to address was the noise problem. So double glazing does a fantastic job at actually mitigating that.
Upstairs and down, the windows are different shapes and sizes in every unit to give variety and help achieve Roger's desire to make each living space unique.
People need to feel that they're individuals, and therefore the spaces they live in have to be something more than the 3rd window along from the 4th floor in a bland apartment building.
to have descendants of those original ancestors come and live in the place named after Te Aroha. We think it's outstanding. Every time we drive past here, we think, wow, you know, there's a section of our community, of our people, of our iwi, that are housed in there.
Yeah, I believe the building has been successful. Nobody hates it.
Far from hating it, in 2018, the New Zealand Institute of Architects gave Whātaitai an award for multi-unit housing, proving that it's possible to incorporate good design no matter what the type or scale of project. Around the same time, Roger was also awarded for another multi-unit housing development situated just over the hill in Hataitai. This one was built more than 40 years ago.
This is an apartment complex of 30 apartments, which is known as the Park Mews. It was built in a time when the council were relaxed about the way things looked in the suburbs.
Controversial when it was built, Park Mews was designed by Roger as a protest against the prevailing uniformity of the time. The judge's opinion? This local landmark, with its signature turrets and portholes, is emblematic of a period of New Zealand architecture that shunned modernist norms in favour of a more radical approach.
It was something I always had in mind, was to combine individual houses in a sort of Lego-like manner so that they were all expressing their individuality. But I'm certainly one of the ones I'm proudest of.
A sense of individuality is obviously really important to Roger and something he considers essential, no matter whether you're creating a multi-unit social housing project or a high-end, one-off bespoke house. Which leads us to the last of the houses Roger's taking me to. And let me tell you, it's a stunner. For the last of Roger Walker's favourite houses, we're in the Coromandel East Coast settlement of Kuaotunu.
Well, Roger, this is
Pretty different.
very, very different, but I really, really like it.
Yes.
And what I specifically like is those turret type things that are sticking out there.
Well, that's given the name to the house. It's called the Light Mine House.
Designed by award-winning architect Ken Crossan, the Light Mine House draws its inspiration from the history of mining in the Coromandel area, taking the form of a mine shaft and inverting it to look up into the sky and funnel light into the house.
Wow. Have a look at that. Now, that is a view and a half, Roger.
And then you've got... And then there's this.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
This one over here is a little
They're all
bigger,
slightly
different shape.
Yeah, yeah.
It gives it a sense of bigness and openness and more space. It's not a big room,
No.
but it feels a lot bigger than it is because of obviously that.
Well, the builder
vertical.
client hated ordinary roofs.
Did he?
Yeah, so he wanted no roof. So this is sort of a flat roof. Which
No
is,
roof would have been a bit of a problem, though. Might have been a little wet.
They're kind of random, which I like.
Yeah.
They're not rectangular because, you know, the house is very precise, and to have everything rectangular and
Yeah, a little
precise
bit
would
too...
be a bit tedious. Would be a bit forced. Yeah.
This beautiful home was constructed by its owner, Hamilton builder Bob DeLue, in collaboration with the local construction company. And the quality of the finish is something very special.
I just can't believe the workmanship. Matthew is just immaculate, isn't it? Like everything lines up. He's an absolute craftsman. Just the attention to detail.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Right. The fixings are really interesting. There's no nails that you can see, so it's obviously all adhesive.
I think it's all glued, yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the main bedroom, but look, this detail with the hinges recessed, everything's...
Yeah.
It's the dance of the seven veils, isn't it?
This bold piece of architecture was rewarded by taking out the Home of the Year prize in 2020. But the initial reaction from locals was not entirely positive.
During the process of construction, our site sign was defaced. So, you know, somebody had written, you know, ugly house, shouldn't be here, sort of thing. So it is interesting how people kind of react to something that is a little bit other than the norm, I guess. Yeah. And we describe them a little bit like it being not a pop song, which you get straight away. You know, there is actually a logic in it. And it takes time. But I think now that it's kind of within the landscape and softened off in terms of the colours, there's an acceptance.
This is what won it, obviously, House of the Year, because it's such a unique piece of architecture, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I've never seen anything like that.
No.
And they're all different. But
Well, the judges probably laid down on the bed and went, whoa, when they saw that.
that'll do, Rog.
Yeah. There's a miniature light shaft up here,
Oh,
over the loo.
a baby mine.
Yeah, a miner.
Very good, Rog. You're as sharp as a tack.
Oh, sharp as a butt nail, mate.
The house is separated into 3 distinct buildings, with a covered walkway linking the main pavilion to the first of 2 bedroom pods.
Right.
Yeah.
This is lovely.
It is. Oh, there you go. That's like you got 4 beautiful bunks.
Yep.
And then you've got another really nice double bedroom, same level of finish.
Yeah, perfect.
Because this is obviously a sleeping pavilion, I reckon they've done away with the turrets and the light and all that. You know, it's a lot darker, so more conducive to, you know, sleeping and calm. And
Yeah.
I'll tell you what else I really like about this house, Roger, is I'm not sure what sort of wood it is, but it's certainly not cedar, I don't think.
It's totara.
Is it?
It's really thick totara. The owner found a whole pile of totara logs that had been sitting on the ground in the bush somewhere for about 60 years, and he had them milled. It just looks so good.
It does,
just feels,
in the way it weathers.
It just feels solid. He's expressed the thickness of it by having all these gaps.
By designing the light mine as a series of distinct pavilions, the owners have a real flexibility with how they use the house, inhabiting only the main pavilion when it's just the 2 of them, or opening up one or both of the other bedroom pods to accommodate guests.
This is the last pod, that's it?
3rd and final pod.
Yeah.
Again, it's got that nice airy feel. We're pretty privileged, actually, Roger, to be standing here in a home like this, with a view like this, you know.
This is a mind blower.
I reckon you could probably stay in this one. I'll have the main chalet, if you want to call it that. And then we'll let the owners just, every now and then we'll let them come, they can stay in the second pod. Roger, it's obviously a magnificent piece of architecture, but give me the rundown on why you actually chose it.
Well, I chose it because it was different, but it was a strong idea, which was the mine shafts. And it's a real idea. They're not arbitrary. They relate to the history of Coromandel.
Yes.
I knew the architect was Ken Crossan. I've got a lot of admiration for Ken Crossan. He does different, and he does different well.
He does out-of-the-box architecture.
Well, out of the box.
See, because if you didn't have those turrets or mine shafts, it would be just a box like any other house.
Yeah.
It'd still be cool and all that stuff.
It's a very clever box. Like, it's a series of different shapes which all hang together. I think it's magnificent. It's certainly one of my favourite houses in the world.
So all the homes we've been to that you've shown me, you certainly don't do ordinary.
I don't think you need to do ordinary. People are individuals, and I think we're often brainwashed into doing the same things and, you know, eating the same food and living in the same houses. And there's no need for us to do this. This is our one and only life. And, you know, the joy and surprise element of this house is just magic, you know.
Yes.
So ordinary is easy, with a little bit more effort. And the same sort of budget. You don't need a big budget to do interesting.
Yes.
I just think it's a mental attitude. Yeah.
Dead right.